For 7 years, someone tormented a woman named Cindy James. Over 100 incidents, threatening phone calls, dead cats thrown into her yard, letters made from cut-out magazine letters, a knife driven through her hand, pinning it to the floor. And then she was found dead, hands and feet tied behind her back, stuffed into a blackberry bush, with a lethal cocktail of drugs in her blood. But here's the thing that makes this case impossible to solve. The police spent over $1 million investigating, and after all of it, they still couldn't determine how she died. To understand how we got here, we need to go back to the beginning. Cynthia Elizabeth Hack was born on June 12, 1944, in Oliver, British Columbia, Canada. Her father, Otto Hack, was a colonel in the Royal Canadian Air Force. By all accounts, he ran his household the same way he ran his squadron: strict discipline, physical punishment, absolute obedience. The family moved constantly because of his military postings. Ottawa, France, back to Canada. Cindy never had the chance to put down roots anywhere. In the early 1960s, she wrote letters home telling her family she had gotten engaged to a medical intern. Then, according to Cindy, this man discovered he had terminal cancer and died during a ski trip they took together. It was a devastating story, but no one in her family had ever met this man. Cindy refused to give his name. No records of his death were ever found. This detail would later become extremely important. Cindy became a nurse. She eventually married a man named Dr. Roy Makepeace. Not just any doctor, but a psychiatrist who specialized in occupational health. He understood how the human mind works, how to manipulate it, and he had access to powerful sedatives. The marriage didn't last. They separated. And that's when everything started. In 1982, the phone calls began. At first, just silence on the other end. Then heavy breathing. Then whispered threats. On October 12th, a voice said, "I'll get you one of these nights, Cindy." The next day, the caller turned sexually explicit and violent before the line went dead. 2 days later, Cindy reported hearing footsteps circling her house at night. The police told her to change her phone number to an unlisted one. She did. The calls came to the new number immediately. Whoever was doing this had access to information they shouldn't have had. Then came the letters. No postage stamps. They were placed directly on her doorstep. Inside were photographs of a man holding a dagger, images of a woman being strangled, and notes assembled from cut-out magazine letters. One simply read, "I see you." Dead cats appeared in her yard. Phone lines were sliced. Windows were smashed. Light bulbs on her porch were loosened so they wouldn't turn on at night. Cindy tried everything. She moved houses multiple times. She installed alarm systems. She even invited a police officer to live with her as a roommate for protection. None of it mattered. The stalker always found her. In 1984, things escalated to a level no one was prepared for. A private investigator hired by Cindy's family arrived at her home and found her unconscious on the floor. A paring knife had been driven straight through her hand, pinning it to the hardwood. Underneath the knife handle, soaked in her blood, was a note made from cut-out letters. "Now you must die, Kai." When doctors treated her at the University of British Columbia Medical Center, they discovered 2 needle puncture marks on the inside of her right arm. Someone had injected her with an unknown sedative before stabbing the knife through her hand. When Cindy woke up, she remembered nothing. Not the attacker, not how they got in. Nothing. But then something interesting happened at the hospital. A man with a distinctive accent called the front desk, asking detailed questions about the hospital's security procedures and patrol schedules. When police played a recording of Roy Makepeace's voice for the receptionist, she said there was a very strong possibility it was the same person. Roy Makepeace became the prime suspect. Under hypnosis therapy in October 1984, Cindy revealed a suppressed memory of witnessing a double murder, though she couldn't provide specific details. Another session brought up what her therapist called a chilling memory directly connected to Makepeace. Cindy became convinced her ex-husband was the one hunting her, but Makepeace denied everything. He provided alibis for the key incidents. He couldn't be placed at any scene, and he turned the accusations around, publicly criticizing the mental health care Cindy was receiving, suggesting she was unstable. By the mid-1980s, the case had consumed the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on surveillance, hidden cameras, stakeouts, and phone taps. And in all that time, across over 100 reported incidents spanning years, they had not collected a single fingerprint, a single strand of DNA, a single piece of physical evidence belonging to anyone other than Cindy herself. Not one hair, not one skin cell, not one footprint. Then came the fire that changed everything. Cindy reported that a Molotov cocktail had been thrown through her basement window. But when forensic investigators examined the scene, they found that all the broken glass had fallen outside the house, onto the garden. The dust on the outer window ledge was completely undisturbed. No fingerprints, no scuff marks, no sign anyone had stood there. The laws of physics were clear. The window had been broken from the inside, not the outside. The fire had been set from within. This discovery shattered what remained of the police's trust in Cindy. They ordered her to take polygraph tests. She failed them. Her answers kept changing. Contradictions piled up. Psychiatrists brought in by the RCMP began suggesting Cindy might suffer from multiple personality disorder, that an alternate personality within her was carrying out the attacks without her conscious knowledge. Others believed she had factitious disorder, deliberately creating emergencies to attract attention and sympathy, the same pattern that may have started with the mysterious dead fiancé back in the 1960s. The pressure broke her. In 1986, Cindy was admitted to Riverview Psychiatric Hospital. In her private diary, she wrote a line that would haunt the investigation forever. "They say I'm doing this to myself. I don't know how much longer I can take this." The RCMP began pulling back their protection. They believed Cindy was fabricating everything. She was left increasingly alone. But even as police withdrew, strange things kept happening. On April 29th and May 10th, 1989, RCMP tracking dogs picked up the scent of an unknown individual leading through the fence in Cindy's backyard. The dogs followed the trail before losing it completely. During one of the earlier fires, a friend named Tom, who was sleeping over that night, saw a man standing outside the house who immediately ran away when Tom approached. These were third-party witnesses and trained police dogs confirming the presence of someone other than Cindy. Then came May 25th, 1989. It was a Thursday. Cindy was last seen on her way to deposit a paycheck at the bank. That same day, police found her car abandoned in a shopping center parking lot. There were drops of fresh blood on the outside of the driver's door. Her credit cards and personal items were scattered underneath the car, as if dropped during a struggle. But inside the car, groceries and a neatly wrapped gift sat perfectly undisturbed on the seat. If someone had violently dragged her from the car, those items should have been thrown everywhere. The scene looked staged, but staged by whom? 2 weeks passed. No contact, no ransom demand, nothing. On June 8, 1989, a construction worker found Cindy James' body in a dense blackberry bush next to an abandoned house in Richmond. Her hands and feet were tied behind her back, in a hog tie position using a black nylon stocking. A second black stocking was wrapped tightly around her neck. She was not wearing shoes. The autopsy revealed that the stocking around her neck was not what killed her. Her windpipe and larynx showed no fractures from strangulation pressure. Cindy James died from combined drug intoxication, a lethal mixture of 3 powerful substances: morphine, an opioid painkiller that suppresses breathing; diazepam, commonly known as Valium, a powerful sedative; and flurazepam, a hypnotic benzodiazepine used to treat severe insomnia. Together, these 3 drugs would have caused rapid loss of consciousness, followed by respiratory failure. But here's the detail that makes this case unsolvable. Police searched the area around her body thoroughly. They found no syringe, no needle, no vial, no container of any kind. The drugs had been injected. The needle marks proved that. But the injection device had simply vanished. Cindy's father, Otto Hack, posed the question that no investigator has ever been able to answer. How does a woman inject herself with a massive dose of drugs that cause almost immediate unconsciousness, then tie her own hands and feet behind her back with enough force and precision to create a tight hog-tie knot, and then make the syringe disappear? All before the drugs take effect? And there was one more thing. Cindy's body was found half a mile from her abandoned car. She had no shoes on, but when forensic examiners turned her feet over, the soles were completely clean. No dirt, no scratches, no debris. She had not walked to that blackberry bush. Someone had carried her there. In the spring of 1990, a coroner's inquest was held to determine how Cindy James died. It lasted 40 days. Over 80 witnesses testified: police investigators, family members, psychiatrists, a knot expert who demonstrated that a person can technically tie themselves in a hog tie position using stretchy nylon, and Roy Makepeace himself, who testified that he feared police were trying to frame him for his ex-wife's death. The jury was trapped. Ruling it a homicide would mean the RCMP had catastrophically failed to protect a citizen despite spending over $1 million. Ruling it a self-inflicted death would ignore the clean feet, the missing syringe, and the physical impossibility of the timeline. In the end, they delivered a verdict that had almost never been used before. They ruled that Cindy James died as a result of an unknown event. Not murder, not self-inflicted, unknown. Over 30 years have passed. No one has ever been charged. Roy Makepeace was never arrested. No stalker was ever identified. The syringe was never found. The case became one of the most famous episodes of unsolved mysteries and inspired multiple books. What really happened to Cindy James? Was she a deeply troubled woman whose childhood trauma and mental illness drove her to create an elaborate 7-year performance that spiraled beyond her control? Or was there a real predator out there? Someone smart enough to leave 0 forensic evidence across 100 incidents. Someone who watched as the police slowly stopped believing his victim and then struck when she was finally alone. The broken glass that fell the wrong way. The diary entry that showed her desperation. The dogs that caught a stranger's scent. The knife through her hand. The clean soles of her feet. The syringe that vanished into thin air. Every single piece of evidence in this case points in 2 directions at once, and that is exactly why. After all these years, no one can tell you how Cindy James died.